Brothers, pioneering is possible for plenty of people. Perhaps you. Let's give our attention to Brother David White as he demonstrates that theme. Pioneering is possible for plenty of people. Perhaps you.
Don't you feel sorry for people in this old world today? So many of the things that they hoped in, put their trust in, are gone. Even such venerable sacred cows as the Miss America pageant has recently been shaken to its very roots, hasn't it? Their political leaders are accused of wrong financial dealings, deceit. When we go out in field service, and if you spend very long there and talk to many people, don't you get the same feeling that Jesus did when he said that he felt sorry, he felt pity for the people because they were like sheep thrown about and skinned without a shepherd. And all over the world it's that way. Our field service today is taking on more importance than ever before. Peter wrote that Jehovah wants none to be destroyed. He wants all to attain to repentance. And we say to you that pioneering, full-time ministry is an activity for this time in history. The good news must be preached. So, we say, pioneering is possible for plenty of people, perhaps you. At certain times in our life, we all have career decisions to make. A youngster graduating from high school has to make a career decision. What will they do now with their life? Will they go on to college? Will they look for a job? Will they get married right away? Will they buy a car? Just what will they do? What will their career be? Young women, when their last child goes to school, or when the last child leaves home, they have to make a career decision. Many of us have so many of those labor-saving devices. You have the dishwasher and the washer and the dryer and the steam iron and all of these things, that there's much time left in the home. And women have to decide what to do. Psychologists are faced with that, and they even call that time when young women are put in a position where the last child leaves home the empty nest syndrome. And it causes a lot of anguish sometimes. So there is a position in life when a career decision can be made. Childless couples, just married or married for a few years. What career will they have as a couple? Will they plan children? Will they want to build up a nice bank account? Do they want to buy a nice house in the suburbs where they could rear that family? Well, they have those decisions that they can make. Childless couples aren't already committed. People in retirement also are in a position to make a career decision. They've just retired from their secular work that perhaps they've spent 30, 40, 45 years doing. What will they do? Do they look forward to Florida, to fishing, to being able to putter around the house, beautiful flower gardens? What will they do with that extra time that they now have? A career decision is in order for people in that position. Now, how do people make career decisions? How do you decide what to do with your future when you have a chance to do it? And that's the kind of ones we want to talk about this afternoon. Obviously, a sister who's about to have a baby doesn't have a career decision, does she? The decision is being made for her by her circumstances. A brother with a lot of children usually has circumstances that require him to follow a certain pattern of life. But how are career decisions made for anyone? There are a couple things that we'd like to talk about. The first thing someone always wants to know when they're looking at a career, is this the right career for me, is money and material things, which could also be spelled security. Does this job that I'm about to embark on, this career, will it give me security? The second thing that people want to know with a career is, will it fulfill me? Will it fill me and give me a purpose in my life? Or would it be a dead-end thing, a repetitious job? We feel that undoubtedly there are plenty of people here this afternoon that are in situations where you either are in the process of, or should be in the process of, or could be in the process of making a career decision. And our intention in our discussion and some interviews we're going to have is not to criticize anyone, not to make anyone feel guilty, but we'd like you to show you some real life experiences and some things from the Bible that show that pioneering is a worthy career, a very high calling, never to be disparaged in any way. Now, the first reason we mentioned in picking out a career is for security. Now, some people translate that money, and the Bible does say that we do need a certain amount of money. Money is for protection. But let me ask you this. Do any of you, and you could raise your hands on this because no one will, but do any of you know of a secure job in this old world? Do you know of a secure job? Is there such a thing? We recently heard about a brother who had worked for a grocery chain for 20 years, looking further to advancement in that grocery chain. And you know how many days' notice they gave him that he wasn't working there anymore? You know how much they want you to give them if you're going to leave the job. They say at least 2 weeks, or else they'll tell your next employer that that's what you did. They gave the brother 1 day's notice. 20 years of his career was gone, and that's not an unusual experience. The security in this old world, they don't even give you a gold watch when they do that to you. Now, no busy pioneer has ever been laid off. Pioneers do have pink slips. They do have them. If you've never seen one, their monthly report card they send to the society is pink. But it has nothing to do with being laid off. It tells what their good activity is as they follow their career as a full-time minister. In fact, the Apostle Paul in 1 Corinthians chapter 15 and verse 58 commented on this kind of activity. 1 Corinthians chapter 15 and verse 58. No layoff from here. No unsatisfying work. Consequently, my beloved brothers, become steadfast, unmovable, always having plenty to do in the work of the Lord, knowing that your labor is not in vain in connection with the Lord. Well, what about the pay of a pioneer, a full-time minister? What does he get? You know, there was a man that was trained for government work one time. He got disillusioned with the government work, and so he became a herder of sheep, just to get away from it all. Finally, he was called to full-time ministry. He was a little bit reluctant, but we'd like you to see what he felt about the pay, and it's in Hebrews chapter 11 and verse 26. We'd like you to look at that, and you see if we stretch the facts too far on it. Hebrews chapter 11 and verse 26. First, we'll start with verse 24 to find out who it was. By faith, Moses, trained as a government official, trained in Pharaoh's household, could have had a high position there, chose to be ill-treated with the people of God. He left that position. He went out from that, and then Jehovah called him back. And then read verse 26. Because he esteemed the reproach of the Christ, of God's appointed one, as riches greater than the treasures of Egypt. For he looked intently toward the payment of the reward. Moses had no problem leaving what he had in Egypt. Jehovah promises us in Matthew chapter 6 and verse 33 that if we seek his kingdom interest first, he'll take care of us. You have never seen a hungry pioneer. And King David said that the righteous would not be without bread. You've never seen it. In fact, that whole chapter 6 of Matthew, the discussion that Jesus gave there in his Sermon on the Mount, what he's talking about is material things, which this world equates with security. For instance, if you want to turn there in Matthew chapter 6 and verse 24, he said, no one can slave for two masters. Either he will hate the one and love the other, or he will stick to the one and despise the other. You cannot slave for God and for riches. So if our security was in a job, or whatever else that we might put it in a physical way, then we could not be slaves to Jehovah. And then he goes on, and we're familiar probably with verses 25 through 32, where he examines what we wear, what we eat, even how long our lifetime would be. And then he ends up with the words in verse 33, keep on then seeking first the kingdom and his righteousness, and all these other things will be added to you. Now, what career can you think of that you would be able to seek the kingdom in a more complete way than in the full-time service? We can't possibly think of one that would enable us to test Jehovah out. He said, he'll provide these necessary things. So now let's just review how far we've gone now. You're making a career decision, and you're thinking about pioneering as that career. You can't get laid off, okay? No pink slip. You're promised by your employer food, clothing, shelter, and even some recreation. How could you ask for more? Doesn't that sound good? Well, how about vacation? How about sick time? Well, as many of you know, a pioneer has a goal of 90 hours a month. That's 3 hours a day. If you are able to do that each month, then during that year's time, that gives you 2 weeks vacation and 5 sick days. Now, that's not bad. That's what a pioneer is able to have. Jehovah in the 23rd Psalm, in verses 1 to 3, beautifully describes those who are pioneering and how they would feel, or those who are in full-time service, as King David was, and how they would feel about that relationship involving their security, involving time for recreation. Jehovah is my shepherd. I shall lack nothing. In grassy pastures he makes me lie down. By well-watered resting places he conducts me. My soul he refreshes. Yes, pioneers have a good time. He leads me in the tracks of righteousness for his name's sake. What about retirement benefits? We mentioned that was one of the things someone would pick out when they're looking at a career decision. What about the retirement benefits? You know, when you go to work for a factory, you can take even a little bit less each month, each week, if the retirement's real good. And so people do that. They really are working toward death. That's their orientation in their job. Well, let me tell you about the retirement benefits of pioneering. Imagine if you can, and we have to say that because that's how they always say it, but I know you can, a busy life on a paradise retreat, growing younger every day, being with loved ones who have just been resurrected, having families, homes, fresh, succulent fruits and vegetables of every kind. Can you imagine retirement like that? Why, an advertising executive couldn't make a description like that. And every word of it is true. And that is offered to those that give Jehovah their all. Plenty of people can pioneer. Now, the second thing that one making a career decision looks for is a fulfilling job. Will it fulfill me? Will it not be boring? Well, let me ask you, how creative is field service? Wouldn't you call it one of the most creative works that you can possibly do? There's no assembly line work in field service. Every door is different and you don't know who's behind it. And every response is different. Even every territory has a different personality. And then as we begin to call on those people and have return visits and Bible studies, that is some of the most creative work that you could possibly do. When you have a Bible study with somebody, with a person of interest, you are actually seeing a creation. You're seeing a disciple of Jehovah. You're seeing someone who is getting to know their Heavenly Father. Now, you're there to help, but that's all you are. You're only assisting Jehovah in them getting to know Him, and you do that 2 or 3 or 4 times a week. Some of the pioneers have more Bible studies than that. And you ask them, and they'll tell you that is some of the most fulfilling work that anyone could possibly do. Call on someone who's mourning over the loss of a loved one, or who's frustrated with the world, as we mentioned at the very beginning, the way it is today. And show them the scriptures that we're sharing this month, from Ecclesiastes, from Proverbs chapter 2, and see their face light up. How more creative work could you want and to share in? Pioneering fits each of our abilities. The full-time service allows you to use the intelligence that Jehovah gave you, the gift of speech, whatever abilities that we have can be used to the full in pioneering. And the very enjoyable thing about it is that you don't become frustrated, because as you call in the territory, the people in that territory that will respond to what you're sharing with them may not to the next brother or sister coming down the road. And so as we each go over the territory, our own abilities and gifts from God can be used to the full. Nothing frustrating, no dead-end jobs, no assignments you can't handle in the full-time ministry. Pioneering accomplishes more for the human race than the best politician, than the best one in the medical profession, than anybody could ever have in an educational career. Yes, pioneering is possible for plenty of people. Perhaps you.